So guys, just minutes ago I got home, ran up the stairs, fired up the lights and the camera, and this is what you get for your Tuesday video report. We'll forsake the suit and tie look today, and the hell with shaving as well. Listen, I've got a couple of complimentary plays coming your way in just a moment. But first, a little history lesson, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but yesterday was a historic date in music history, because it marked 50 years since the release of the Beach Boys, which really means Brian Wilson's album, that, of course, being Pet Sounds, an album that was inspired by Wilson listening to the Beatles' Rubber Soul, an album that went ahead and inspired Paul McCartney, Lennon, and the Beatles to eventually do Sgt. Pepper's. But it was an album that, of course, really changed the way people thought about music in the 60s, because it was a concept album. It had a unifying theme that you hadn't really seen since Frank Sinatra did Wee Small Hours of the Morning back in the 50s, but those weren't his songs. Those were a collection of songs that fit a mood. But this was an album that, for the most part, was written with one unified theme. And, of course, we've seen that repeated year and year over and over again by various artists over the past 5 decades. Certainly a masterpiece, not a huge seller in the United States, a huge seller in the United Kingdom, but, of course, just so well respected. I would say probably among the 2 favorite cuts on that album for me, one of them would be God Only Knows. And that is also the rhetorical question that needs to be answered when I think back to that 15-dime best bet loser I had last night on the Golden State Warriors, because God only knows what the hell happened to the Golden State Warriors. I mean, I'm up by 13 points at home at halftime. I'm feeling pretty good. And that phrase I like to use, you have to have reasonable expectations when the Warriors are playing at home, where they rarely lose, where they rarely blow a lead, where they've got a 13-point advantage at halftime, and a game where Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook combined couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, 17 for 51 shooting in the game. You got to feel pretty good about covering. Hell, forget about the coverers. They didn't even win the damn game outright. They get outscored 23-14 in the fourth quarter of that game. I'll tell you what, the Warriors have their work cut out for them right now. Billy Donovan has really surprised me with his Thunder here. I don't know, maybe it's Donovan's preparation as a college coach all those years, getting his teams ready for one-and-done appearances in the big dance. Maybe that's what spurred the Thunder and kept them on an even keel after they got blown out by 32 points in the first game by the Spurs in San Antonio. Same thing when they lost game number 2 at home to Dallas as well. He really has been getting the max out of his team here. And I'm looking at the Warriors last night, and if I had told you before the game that Steph Curry would have 26 points and Klay Thompson would have, 25, I think it was last night, and Draymond Green would have 23, you'd feel pretty good about that too, having a 13-point halftime lead. But the fact is, they didn't get the job done. My biggest fear going into this series was that the Warriors would not be able to hold their own on the boards, and they certainly were out-rebounded again last night, 62-55. But listen, it's not the fact that they were out-rebounded by 7, because that's not a gigantic number. It's the fact that the Thunder got more of the critical rebounds, which resulted in getting their transition game going and getting some cheap second-half points as well. Steven Adams, who has had such a wonderful playoff run here, 16 points, 12 rebounds last night. Serge Ibaka, 11 points and 11 rebounds with the double-double. Cantor off the bench with 8 points and 6 rebounds, game, set, and match. And Steph Curry did not play well. If I tell you at the top that he had 26 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists, you're going, typical Steph Curry night. But he had 7 turnovers. He was 9 for 22 shooting. He disappeared in the fourth quarter. No, they need the Steph Curry who's going to bury those threes, daggers into the heart of opponents. They're going to need the Steph Curry that's going to go for 34, 35 points if they're going to win game number 2. But hey, that's tomorrow night. We've got game number 1 of Cleveland-Toronto going tonight. Favorites now 39-27-1 against the spread so far in the postseason, after the Warriors lost and after the favorites went 12-9-1 in the second round. The under is 39-27-1, as last night's game stayed well under the posted price. This after the over was 13-9 in round number 2. Home teams had a 4-game advantage in the first round. They had a 4-game advantage versus the spread in the second round, and they're 0-1 so far tonight. And tonight you have a Cleveland team that opened up at 10.5 early this morning, already up to 11. against Toronto. Listen, that's my play tonight, and I really don't have an opinion on the total on that contest. Instead, let's focus on baseball, where I think there's a couple of damn good plays. First one, I'm going to go with the Texas Rangers as cheap road chalk against the Oakland A's. Now, I know the A's have won 5 straight in the series, and I know the A's won last night's game as well, 3-1 against a Rangers team that had won 4 of its previous 5. And I also know that the A's are 6-11 at home this season, 6-11, and they called up a guy, Jesse Hahn from AAA Nashville, his second stint in the big leagues so far this season, to make the start here today. 2 starts previously for them this season. He worked 12 innings, he gave up 11 hits, 5 runs, and he walked 6 batters, and he only struck out 4. But the real reason I like the Rangers tonight is because Cole Hamels is on the hill. The team has won 16 of his last 17 starts. No, he has not been dominant like Jake Arrieta of the Cubs, but still, 16-1 in his last 17 starts, that ain't bad. Personally, he is 11-0 with a 3.12 earned run average in those 17 starts, 1.29 ERA in 2 career starts against the A's, one of which came last season. So again, even though the A's won 5 straight at home in the series, or 5 in a row overall in the series, I should say, I like the Rangers to break out and get the win here tonight. The other complimentary play, I'm going to go with Pittsburgh at home on the run line against the Atlanta Braves. The Pirates took last night's series opener. I'm going to go with them once again today. Juan Nicasio going for the Bucks. He's their latest reclamation project in the lines of Francisco Liriano and A.J. Burnett, etc. Guys who seemingly had their careers on the downside or out, who they've managed to make into more than serviceable starting pitchers. He has not pitched great this season, but listen, at PNC Park, he's had 4 starts, and the Pirates have won 3 of them, and his earned run average just a shade over 3 at 3.09 in those 4 outings, so certainly nothing to be embarrassed about. Meanwhile, the Braves are going with the rookie Aaron Blair, making his 5th major league start. They've lost his first 4 starts, and the thing that sticks out to me is this is a guy who has an earned run average of 4.05 in those first 4 starts. But then you look at the number of base runners he's allowed. And in 22 innings, 19 hits, 11 base runners. That's 30 base runners in 22 innings of work. But more importantly, he's walked 11. He's only struck out 7. He is not a power pitcher. He's not going to be able to help himself. That means a lot of balls get into play. And I'd much rather take the Pirates, who are coming off the 8-5 win last night, than a Braves team that has averaged a little under 3 runs a game in its last 19, or no, actually in its last 24 or 25 games and on the season. One of, if not, I think they're actually the worst offensive team. They're still a couple of points behind the Phillies. Yes, I know they fired their manager, and I do have a new manager theory where I always look for teams after a new managerial change to play well in baseball, because guys that have been in the doghouse suddenly are given a new leash on life. Not lease, I said leash. And, it just brings a whole new air of freshness to the locker room. But when you're 9-28 on the season, you ain't getting better just because you changed your managers. So I'm going to go with Pittsburgh. The run line, they're like $1.15 dog. You probably get them, and that's your other complimentary play. That'll do it, guys. I wish you well, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.